Every time somebody talks about building systems in your business, you say, yeah, that's great in theory. Some checklists, some processes, documents in place. But when it comes to doing it, always busy doing other shit. You got subbies to message, clients to call, quotes to get out. And the last thing you think about doing is spending time writing down your processes because it seems like the biggest procrastination and waste of time possible. So it never happens. You keep running off instinct and experience and it keeps you moving forwards. It's working until one week, something falls through the cracks. Something breaks. It costs you the client. It takes months to fight back out of that hole. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what you're missing out on by not spending time on your systems. So let's get into it. So here's the thing about systems. They're almost completely invisible when you don't need them. When the business is doing well, when you're on top of everything, when the team's performing, look, the absence of documented processes doesn't really hurt you. You're filling gaps with your knowledge, your own presence, your own experience. And because it's working, you assume it's going to continue to keep working. So why fix something that's broken? Look, businesses don't stay in the good patch forever. Good people leave. You get sick. Reality hits. You can be faced with good problems that'll instantly break this process. You get too much work that you can't install yourself, which means you then have to build a team to support that work, which means what you've currently got needs changing. You might already have a team and a key person goes down. What happens if that person goes down? Who steps in? And in every one of these little moments that you face in business, there is a potential fracture that you can face. This is where leaning on your systems comes into play. You shouldn't have to be thinking on the fly. You should just rely on the systems. Another classic stitch up is if you grow your business and you have people that you put in those positions that just seem to do it well. They just get it right. What happens if they leave and you don't have the experience that they have to run that position? Even though it's your company, they might have been doing something that's worked for so long, but they never documented the process. So you putting somebody else in that position just doesn't work. I've watched solid businesses crumble over a 3-week period because the owner had to take a holiday. It wasn't because they were incapable. It's because they had never been dealt those cards before. They didn't know who to check into. They didn't know where things needed to move left and right. It's because nothing was documented. And you can't blame your team when that happens. That's the owner's responsibility to grow it and scale it safely, where if things do go wrong, they can look back at a document, bit of paper or whatever, some sort of system to know what to do. Point number one, you are the system and that is the problem. In most small trade businesses, the owner is the process. How they quote things, well, that's in their head. How do materials get ordered? Well, he did it. How the client gets updated? Well, he normally calls them. How quality gets checked? Well, he always just knew if it was good or bad work. And because he's good at all of that, the jobs run well. But what he's actually built is a business that's entirely dependent on one person being available, who is motivated, healthy, and knows every moving part of that business. This is a fragile way to build anything. The moment you remove yourself from the picture, the cracks start showing immediately. Start identifying the things that only work because you were there doing them personally. Not to document everything overnight, but to get honest about how much of the business genuinely just fully depends on you. That list is your risk register. Every item on this list is a reason the business can't grow past you, survive without you, and give you the freedom that we're all searching for. Remember why we got into business? It's to have a nice house, nice car, hey, remember that? Let's start building that. All right, tip number 2. A system doesn't have to be complicated to work. I know that's crazy. Simple, right? Most people think when it comes to systems that it is expensive software, long manuals, corporate documents that nobody ever reads. And because it sounds complicated, they never start. But a system is just a documented way of doing something consistently. That simple. It can be a 1-page checklist. In fact, 1-page checklist is much better. You don't want it more than 2 pages. Too complicated. Only 1 page, guys. It could be a photo of a whiteboard. It could be a voice note that you say to yourself that gets typed up later. In fact, you can voice note things into ChatGPT or Manus and get a full 1-pager written on AI right now. It's that simple. It could be a simple template to show people how your jobs start off. It doesn't have to be polished. It just needs to be out of your head. Look, when I systemize businesses, I start with the highest priority. The thing that's going to hurt me the most if it fails. For most tradies, that's how jobs normally get handed over to the team, how variations get handled, and when invoices get invoiced at the end of the job. Just pick one, write it down in plain English, and then simplify the steps. Then give it to the person that's responsible to carry out that task and get them to go over it themselves. Adjust it once, boom, that's your system. You don't need expensive consultants. You don't need expensive fucking software. You just need 20 minutes to look at what you're doing and put it on paper. Tip number 3, the cost of not having a system in place is invisible until it's enormous. And I think this is why most tradies put it off. The cost of running a business without systems doesn't actually show up on your invoice. It's not a line item on your BAS. It's the variation that didn't get captured because you didn't have a process for it. Imagine having a worker and he just does work, goes above and beyond, but you could be charging for it. It's a system to tell them to stop, only do the scope that they're supposed to do, and do a variation if it's outside that scope. That's a system. Here's another one. A callback at the end of the day because the job wasn't handed over properly because you didn't have quality checks. You didn't have a system to go over your own work. It might be photos. You know the one I'm talking about. I'm talking about the employee that leaves early because they think the job is done, but it's not. Here's another one. The client never came back because you never followed up. They might have had extra work, but because you didn't have a system in place to call that same client to double check that they didn't need your services or did, you lost that money. That's lost money. Look, none of these things feel like a systems failure failure in the moment because it's invisible, which is what I was saying before. When you scale and you become more dependent on your systems, you realize how big the effect of not having a system in place can be, because you get stitched up because you have people running positions within your company that fail because they don't think like you. Let me shine another light on the matter. Poor systems feels like a bad day, a shit client, or just one of those extra fucking things on your plate. Add all these little nuances across a whole year, these costs end up being fucking shitloads. And I'm not just talking about the money, I'm talking about the stress, the mental workload of constantly feeling like you're putting out fires because things don't go right. You're reactive to the things that happen around you, whereas you should be proactive. And that prevents mistakes from happening in the first place. Trust me, life becomes easy. It was easier for me to run a company that cost $1 million a year in overheads versus running a business where I had 2 apprentices second year. And it's because I didn't understand what systems need to be in place, and I was very reactive at the time. But when you've got a big team of people that know exactly what needs to be done every single day, you'll be surprised how stress-free it can become, or stressless. Look, a business that runs clean is not lucky. They're just somebody that's put the time in at the front end to work out the back end. They've set up guardrails in place so that if things go wrong, people aren't going to fall off the edge. A successful business owner will tell you that every hour they spend building systems is 10 hours that they get back and 10 hours that they don't have to stress about. And I'm one of them. Tip number 4, systems are what make people reliable. Oh, good. One of the most common things that you hear from tradesmen is that they can't find reliable people. I'm not saying that that's never true. Good people are hard to find in this industry, but I do believe that the problem isn't always the reliability of that person. Every time you go to a job, it's slightly different depending on who's watching. This isn't really setting up people to be reliable workers. It's setting up people to guess and then holding them accountable to guessing wrong. A clear system is telling people exactly what is expected of them before and after the job is done. It removes the guesswork, and it means people can come on board and get the job done faster at your quality. No, I've got to think this. It means a leading hand can do the job without calling you 6 times a day. Wouldn't that be fucking nice? And it means if something goes wrong, you can look at a process and figure out exactly where it broke. That way you know how to fix it for next time. That way you can give your team the feedback that they need to improve, and you can hold them accountable to a document, a bit of paper, or something that you've stored that says the process on it and you can refer back to. This removes the emotion when it comes to dealing with people when they fuck up. There's no more guesswork. It's simple. Now, the line worth saying to your team when you introduce them to a new process is this. This isn't about trusting you. It's about making sure that everybody's working to the same standard, removing the guesswork. And trust me, that lands well because it's true.